Got a couple things I want to talk about today. Why don't you come take a ride with me and we'll go over some of the latest headlines that I think should be talked about, which really aren't being discussed in today's mainstream media. I'll wait for a couple of you guys to get in here. Let me know when you're in here. Give me a thumbs up, comment. I'm not seeing anybody in here yet, but I guess for the sake of the people that are catching the rerun, I'll go ahead and get started. So we're going to talk about some oil news, some environmental news, and things of that nature. So first thing I want to talk about is some information that came out regarding WTI Midland crude oil recently. So it was discovered that Midland crude oil has high levels of vanadium, iron, and nickel, and this is a pretty big concern for Europe, because the crude oil is being shipped to Europe, and the refineries that they have are not equipped to remove vanadium and iron and nickel from the crude oil. So, from what I understand, they could potentially be putting a halt on the shipments of crude from Midland. I mean, that has implications on the economy, but the other implications that it has is that if that crude oil made its way to the end consumer, it could cause problems with the engines. So vanadium can cause hot corrosion issues in marine engines, diesel engines, and things like that. And it can also destroy the refineries. They're not adequately equipped in Europe. Not all refineries are adequately equipped in Europe to deal with that kind of stuff. Now, one of the things you got to keep in mind is that the technocrats at the World Economic Forum, they want to totally get rid of the internal combustion engine. And so one of the ways they could do that is by sabotaging the supply of crude oil before it gets to the refineries. So, whether or not this stuff actually was contaminated at the source or somewhere along the lines, I mean, I can't, I don't know. It's only speculation on my part. But, the World Economic Forum's made it very clear, right? They want everybody to transition to sustainable methods of transportation. They want to get rid of the internal combustion engine. And so how convenient or what are the odds that these things, as they happen, continue to help them advance that agenda? This is just one more thing, coincidence rather, that is occurring, which seems to be advancing their agenda, right? So, people in Europe are now going to have to watch out for Midland crude at the pump, because they have to worry about having a bunch of vanadium in the fuel now. And if a bunch of engines in Europe now start to get corroded, they're going to blame it on lack of oversight at Midland, which probably I don't know is probably not the case, but whatever, that's to be seen. It's just speculation, but nevertheless, it's important to talk about, because Midland, Texas, operating the Permian Basin, it's a big that's where a lot of our GDP comes from. It's where that's where we get a lot of outside revenue from. Is from the Permian Basin. That's where Midland is. So it's important to talk about. Now, on that front, the oil and gas front, the Biden administration was trying to renege on an agreement that they made with Manchin to to open up leases in the Gulf of Mexico. They were gonna sell leases to like 73.5 million acres of space out in the Gulf of Mexico to the oil companies. And as soon as this was part of that IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, that was one of the deals that they made with Manchin for the IRA to get through, and they immediately tried to renege on that. They reduced the amount of area from like 73.4 million acres to like 67 million acres. And then they tried to just scrap it all together. Well, the oil companies challenged it in court, and the environmentalists were trying to say that it was going to endanger some rice whale habitat or whatever. It's what it's always about. Well, this time the federal judge actually took the side of the oil companies, and he said that this was a clear case of the weaponization of the Endangered Species Act. So the Biden administration was just forced to open up the leases to the oil companies in the Gulf of Mexico. So, I mean, that's a win for the economy. But as far as the environmentalists are concerned, shame on destroying the habitat of some endangered rice whale. But anyways, guys, like I said, I mean, it's always about oil and natural gas. And so, on that note, I mean, whatever. It is what it is. Watch out for sabotage. Watch out for things like that. ZZ Pink's here now, and he's probably talking with Biden about not following through on what he's required to do for all the money that he took from the CCPs a couple years ago. But anyway, so there's the news with the oil and gas. Let's talk about some things that are going on in the ocean. So there's increased levels of red tide in Florida and in the Philippines. Now, one of the reasons why I monitor algae blooms and red tide blooms is because it's directly related to prophecy, right? The red tide turns the water red, and it's responsible for massive fish kills. And that kind of stuff is talked about in prophecy, right? In the end days, one of the things that you got to watch out for is toxic water, fish, and a bunch of fish dying and all that stuff. And we're starting now to see blooms right off Manatee County in Florida and in the Philippines. Now, could these kinds of things be done as biological war? Yeah, of course. And that's also one of the reasons why I try to monitor the water as best as I can, because all you have to do really to create, and red algae blooms are dangerous to humans, right? Because if the toxic algae gets in the crabs, and then you eat the crabs at a restaurant or whatever, it could kill you. It could literally kill you. So yes, it is very harmful to human health. So it is something we need to be on the lookout for, and it's also a potential biological weapon, and it's an easy biological weapon to deploy. All they have to do is just release a bunch of nitrogen in the water on a hot day, and then basically just release the algae into the water where the nitrogen is, and there it goes. It takes off. And once it gets to like a million parts per liter, it has the potential to become self-sustaining. And what that means is if it fills up an area so quick and starts to create a fish kill, like a major die-off of fish. When those fish decompose, they release nitrogen as they decompose. And so that nitrogen then feeds the red tide. So it's a self-sustaining bloom of red algae, and that's the most dangerous part, because if that happens, then it could run away, right? And if you guys follow Adapt 2030, you've heard him talk about the increase in moisture in the atmosphere since the Honga Tonga eruption. Well, as the water runs off and it brings nitrogen and fertilizer from the ground into the coastal areas, that makes it worse. But the other thing is that rainwater naturally has nitrogen in it, right? So with an increase, I think he said recently it was 14% increase in moisture in the atmosphere. With a 14% increase in moisture, that also theoretically would increase the nitrogen, right? So just that alone, is something that could exacerbate the issue. So it's important for us to watch this stuff, because our enemies could very easily just sabotage wastewater facilities, sabotage pipes, and create bursts in pipes, which then ultimately lead to wastewater running off into the coastal areas, which could help create algae blooms. So, anyways, guys, that's pretty much the majority of what I wanted to talk about. Some things that we got to watch out for, and it's those things are not being talked about on the mainstream media. So, wanted to quickly do kind of a rundown, let you know what it is I'm seeing and things of that nature. So, and one more thing regarding the news. Some good news before I lose signal here. In Texas, the Congress of Texas just passed a bill to grant state troopers the authority to arrest illegal immigrants after they cross the border. So it's at Governor Abbott's desk now, and he's expected to sign it. Well, he's already getting threats from lawyers that if he signs it, they're gonna sue Texas. One of those lawyers, her name's Oni K. Blair. She has worked in the Middle East and Northern Africa, various different Muslim nations. She worked for the State Department, and she's a member of the CFR. Her name is on the CFR roster. You can go to the website and look it up. She's also a member of Young Leaders, Global Leaders or whatever. She's threatening to sue Texas if Governor Abbott approves of the bill. It's just obvious. It's a conflict of interest. I mean, this lady has worked in foreign nations, and she had at her disposal like $150 million of U.S. taxpayer money that she could just however she wanted. Obviously, there's a very high potential that she used our money for corruption and gained influence from the people over there. And now she's, in the SPLC, threatening to sue Abbott for wanting to protect our borders. So my question is, who is she trying to allow or to help to come through the borders? But anyways, all that aside, this bill will basically just allow Texas to take the matter in our own hands. We'll be able to arrest the migrants and potentially send them back to Mexico. It's from what I read, it's a toss-up. Some of the news articles say that the bill will grant us the authority to send them back to Mexico. Other articles say that no, it's not going to grant us the authority to send them back to Mexico, but we'll be able to arrest them. So this has a very serious potential of creating a standoff between state law enforcement and federal law enforcement, because the way the DHS is looking at it is that this is an overstep of our authority, of Texas authority, because they're saying that the federal government has the exclusive right to determine immigration laws and to enforce immigration laws. And so, this could have the potential off between state and where, federal agents could, have an actual physical altercation with state troopers. So, things could definitely escalate from this if it go through, and it's expected to go through. But either way, I think it's a win for Texas if we're able to do it. And if they try to sue Texas, take them to court, we just say screw them and just do it anyways. Because what's going on here at the border is ridiculous. It's at this point, it's not. It's no longer dereliction of duty. Like I was trying to